And joining us now, our regular Thursday NHL insider from TSN, former Vancouver Canuck and Toronto Maple Leaf defenseman Frank Corrado, joining us once again. I'm only going Canadian
That's
credits
fine. That's
in the
high
intro.
praise. Insiders high
Yeah.
praise. Like I'll give you an example. So the OHL trade deadline came around this year, and I'm doing CHL stuff, and I got a few buddies in the league, and I'm trying to get scoops, and no one's giving me anything. And then the Shane Wright move happens, and it's like everyone had it. I couldn't get it. The insider game is it's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. I'll tell you what's happening on the ice, but outside of that, like let Dregs do it. He's too good at it.
No, but see, you played in the National Hockey League, so by virtue of that, you have been inside the National Hockey
Correct.
League.
Yes.
So that is what gets you the
For a
credit in
brief moment in
my books.
time, I was inside the NHL.
Earlier this week, speaking of your CHL coverage and such, of course, we found out that Connor Bedard is headed towards the Chicago Blackhawks without being formal, because that'll happen at the NHL Draft. Give us the summary of what you saw from him. You saw him, I think, in person at least once, and then did some coverage on the TSN CHL coverage as well. Just, when you bear down, watch it tip to tail, a 60-minute hockey game. What did you see from Connor?
The coolest thing was watching him in person. So Victor Findlay and I were lucky enough to do the game out in Calgary at the Saddle Dome, where he basically sold it out. I think it was like 17,200. And I think a Hitman game, we were talking to some people, like a good Hitman game turnout is about 3,500. So like the hype was real around this guy, and it was like the Connor Bedard tour where he was just going around selling out.
Oh, yeah, here too.
Like Moose Jaw, Vancouver, like you name it, it was sold out to go see this guy, and it was warranted. So even before the game, we arranged to just have a little chat with the coach, John Paddock, and Connor Bedard and Tyler Howe, and just kind of see what these guys are all about, pick their brains. Very mature kids, like really mature, both of them. And the thing that really stuck out to me, a couple of things. But the first thing is you can be that age and you can't really carry a conversation yet. And people are really trying to extract things from you. And it's like, I got to ask you a question, and it's yes or no. This guy was amazing to talk to. It was like talking to an adult who had something to say of some substance. And if you asked him a question, like I asked him about his diet, like he gave a very thorough, thought out answer. Asked him about his time in Sweden, because he went over, before he ever played a WHL game, he went over to Sweden, played for HV71 in the under 20 program, like as a underager, so like, and asking him about that and what that was like and the food there and all these kinds of things. And I was so impressed, like walking away from that thinking like, man, this kid is the real deal. Not only is the real deal on the ice, but he's like, as a dude, like as a guy, this kid is the real deal. Like you could sit there and have an awesome conversation with him. And that night, it really stuck out to me, like calling that game, how often he's on the ice, for sure. Like they really relied on him, but it just seemed like as much as he was out there, it never seemed to slow him down. It never seemed to fatigue him. He never really cut any corners. It was very much like McDavid, like on a lot of nights where you watch the Oilers play, and this is a little more in the past when maybe Edmonton didn't have the same kind of depth that they have now. It was like McDavid, 25, 26 minutes a night. The guy doesn't seem to slow down. He doesn't pace himself throughout the game. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, we always talk about the skills, right? The shot is incredible. Like the way he's able to change the angle and beat defensemen through his stick or under legs and beat goaltenders from distance. Like anytime someone, you think you have him, he's got one more trick up his sleeve. He's got one more move. He's very deceptive. He's very shifty. He is the real deal. And it was funny, like Craig Button and I, so Craig did a mock draft on Monday, and I was there as well. And basically, Craig did the mock draft, and I would chime in about the NHL team and what their needs are maybe, or what this kid brings to it. It was good. Like we were on YouTube for about 45 minutes doing this, and we spent, the first 5 minutes on Bedard. And like going back and thinking about the year he had and the World Juniors he had, no player has ever had that kind of tournament at such a young age. Like nobody. Crosby didn't do it. McKinnon didn't do it. McDavid didn't do it. And like Craig is saying, like this was Gretzky-esque. And it's weird because no one ever wants to go there when it comes to the big names, right? Like, and it comes to young defensemen. No one ever wants to go to Lidstrom or Niedermeyer. And that's fair because it's bold to say those kinds of things. But objectively speaking, no one has done what Connor Bedard did since Gretzky. Like, that should put it into perspective just how special this kid is. And he's special on the ice. And just talking to him briefly, like, I thought he was a really special kid off the ice.
Before we pass it to Jeff here, on the TSN Draft Day coverage, I really hope that you've got an as a dude segment where you rate every draft prospect as a dude, you know, like, and it's actually helpful. You know, what are these guys like as dudes?
Yeah,
you know,
there should be like, you know, your shooting is 8 out of 10, passing 9 out of 10.
As a dude,
meter,
the dude scale
11 out of 10. Could definitely have a beer.
So the lottery balls put him in Chicago, and obviously social media went off about the Blackhawks, and you know they shouldn't have even had a ticket in this lottery. All that said, Bedard is going to be a Blackhawk when they get around to drafting him in June. Frank, what about expectations? Like, I think we all agree with everything you just said there. Like, he certainly looks like a can't-miss prospect, but Andreas Athanasiou led the Blackhawks at the end of the season with 40 points. Like, you know, is he a miracle worker, I guess, is my question, or what's he going into in Chicago, and what can realistically be expected of him?
It's a good question because, okay, look at other situations where star players or so-called generational talents have broken into a league. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Sidney Crosby joined the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they had Recchi and Leclerc and Mario Lemieux. Like, it wasn't a great team, but that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid joined a team that had Nugent Hopkins and had some, like, Taylor Hall, like Jordan Eberle. Like, there was some pieces, right? Like, to help a guy like that find his way in the league. Austin Matthews joins the Toronto Maple Leafs. Oh, it just so happens that JVR is a good player at the time. Nazem Kadri is. Tyler Bozak. Oh, and William Nylander and Mitch Marner, they're also joining the ship, and they're very good at a young age. Chicago has none of that. Like, none of that. Lucas Reichel is a good young player that they've drafted. That's great. It'll be really important what Chicago does in the offseason as far as bringing in some veteran players on free agent contracts. It really is, for a number of reasons. For the on-ice product, to have players that Bedard can play with. Like, it can't just be patchwork guys. It can't be the Athanasiou, Max Domi kind of player again, although Max Domi's having a really good playoff, so good for him. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like, it needs to be someone with a little more substance who's going to be there for a long time. The other thing is Sidney Crosby went and lived with Mario Lemieux as an 18-year-old. These things happen. Another example, Ryan O'Reilly lived with Darcy Tucker as an 18-year-old. It's important to have that kind of mentorship person in your life. And I'm not saying you need to live with the guy, but someone you can bump shoulders with on the bus, on the plane, go to dinner with. Hey, man, I haven't scored in 3 games. Did you go through this? What was it like for you? And Jonathan Toews is not coming back to Chicago. Who knows if it didn't sound like Patrick Kane had a lot of interest in going back to Chicago. That's 2 guys that were in that market through thick and thin, through the good times and the bad, that would have been really good mentors for a young player like that, trying to turn that franchise around. Unless
they're okay, you know, bottoming out 2 years in a row. That's how they got Kane and Toews. They bottomed out 2 years in a row. They might be okay doing that.
Exactly. And it was so Mitch Marner's second training camp, so Matthew's first training camp. It was my first training camp as a Leaf. And we're playing like an inter-squad game. And Marner's on my team. And he does something on the ice. He dances someone. And everyone kind of gives it the old, ooh, ah. And then our D coach, DJ Smith, comes down to us. He goes, guys, if I were you, I would pass the puck to Marner. Like, he could get 50, 60 points this year. I think he went on to get 72 that year. Like, so the expectations can be mild. They can be tempered. But it just seems like this kid Bedard, he's bound to do special things. I don't think he's stepping into a situation, Jeff, where it's like he's going to have 39 points and he's going to have 8 goals and, you know, it's going to be a rough first year for him. I think he's stepping into a situation where Chicago recognizes now that free agents will want to play with Bedard, just like free agents want to play with Matthews, just like free agents want to play with McDavid. There's just something that clicks when you have this kind of player. Now, it'll be up to them to kind of nail it as far as who they bring in. But I wouldn't be surprised, regardless of who's on the roster now, I wouldn't be surprised if he does have a big year next year, bigger than people think. Like, I don't know, what do you think? Is 60 points, like, is that kind of like realistic for the kid? Because I think 60 is very realistic
so.
for him next year.
Yeah, on the bottom end, honestly, I think 60 to 70 is.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised
doable.
if he's pushing 75 points. Like, I really wouldn't. Like, that's the kind of talent that he is.
Before Jeff asks some Canuck focused questions, just finish up on the draft here. Who's close? Did your jaw drop for anybody else in your CHL coverage?
I really liked Zach Benson. Like, I thought he was a tremendous player. I love the engine he plays with. I love the motor he has. He's one of those guys where it just seems like any kind of game, no problem. He plays it, and he never stops moving his feet. He's an exciting kind of player. I think there's a little bit of like Mitch Marner in him, which would be really cool. I'll go off the board, though. Like, outside of CHL, I'm going to go to the other CHL, Champions Hockey League. Are you guys familiar?
In Europe?
Yes. So we did, Victor Finley and I did Champions Hockey League coverage on TSN. It's in the middle of the day.
Did you?
So we would start our broadcast at like 10 a.m. Eastern. So you guys would just be getting up, basically. And we had Skellefteå. And Skellefteå has a star defenseman by the name of Jonathan Putis. He's really good in the SHL in Europe. And he gets hurt in a game. And it's a big loss for Skellefteå in like a knockout kind of game. And there's a kid playing with a cage on. And he's out there, and me and Victor are calling this game. We're like, this kid's unbelievable. He's great. And he's just got all this confidence, and he's making plays. And he started the game as the seventh defenseman. And as the game went on, he was running the first power play. He was out there what seemed like every other shift, every third shift. Then the game goes to overtime, and the kid with the cage is starting overtime. The kid's name was Axel Sandin Pellikka. Like, I was really, really impressed by him. I thought, like,
wow.
To do what he did this year, where he kind of jumped onto a team that had high expectations, was playing in some critical situations, whether it was in the SHL or Champions Hockey League, for him to play against men and have that kind of confidence, I thought was really impressive. It's one thing to do it at the under 18s and do it, under 20 in Sweden. But man, the way he handled himself, he was so composed, he was so calm. But most importantly, he was so confident. He almost just played like, not by flying by the seat of your pants, but it's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm making plays, and that's what I do. And I was really impressed with him. I hope he turns out to be a really good player. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go, like, I think Craig had him at 11, which just happened to be Vancouver's pick. Like, I think that's right in and around where the kid ends up going.
Yeah, I've seen him sort of in that range, you're right. So certainly on the Canucks radar, and we know that the Canucks front office and scouting staff having amateur meetings this week as they try to focus in now that the lottery balls have dropped. But the Canucks team has so much work to do, Frank, and there's these 8 franchises that are still competing for the Stanley Cup, and their fan bases are having fun. And then in a place like Vancouver, yesterday Puckpedia put out its list of the salary cap and the space available for teams for next season, and there's one team in the National Hockey League that's already exceeded the upper limit of the salary cap. Yeah, exactly. You get one guess. It's the Vancouver Canucks. And so a lot of talk out here about, how are they going to address this cap crunch that they're in? And ultimately, do you think that there's just going to be a point of reality for Patrick Allvin in the front office that it's going to require attaching sweeteners? Like, that's going to be their path to get out of some of this cap.
I do think that's the path for them. The Leafs had to do it with Patty Marleau. They had to attach a pick. They had to attach a pick to Peter Mrazek. Like, that's what they've put themselves in, and whether they've inherited that or like that's their problem now that they have to deal with. Or they can go down this path where they're just kind of like going to hang out at the top of the cap and be a mediocre team and try not to. This is the situation. They're not in a win now mode where it's like you can just part with a draft pick and be okay with it. They actually need their draft picks. They need their draft picks more than a lot of other teams because, correct me if I'm wrong, they haven't hit on a ton recently as far as young players making the jump. There's some young guys down in Abbotsford, in Hoaglander, and like Podkolzin, was he not down there for a large part of the season?
At the end,
right?
yeah.
Like, these are guys that they need to be contributors next year for a number of reasons, for the fact that they need young players in the lineup, but they also need cap-friendly kind of players in the lineup. So they'll need that. But this is a team that's in no position to start throwing in sweeteners and losing draft picks. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. But I think you're right, Jeff. Like, it comes to the point where, you got guys with 3-4 years left on deals at 4, 5, 6 million. It's like, and they're not playing up to that. They're not giving you that standard. And you're not knocking on the door to the playoffs either. It's the same old rinse and repeat situation. And this is why I get it. So many people wanted to just do the whole scorched earth rebuild. But if you're not going to do that, then you probably have to bite the bullet and say, okay, there's a contract or two that we absolutely need to get out from under, and we just got to take our medicine here and move on from it.
The playoffs continue in Toronto, believe it or not. 3-1 is the deficit. What's the belief level there? Is there anybody that truly believes
it's more than you think, actually? Like, I try and get a temperature around here. So, like, I don't know if I go to the grocery store or, like, might make some phone calls. Hey, like, just regular people. What are you saying? I get some people that are like, no. They win game 4, it's going 7. Then 7, anything can happen, coin flip. Then you get the classic guys like, no, it's over, they're done. This is what the Leafs do, though. They give you this glimmer of hope, this potential that they live off, that, man, if they could just get this one thing going, like if they could just find a way to beat Bobrovsky, it's over. Like, they got it. And then it happens. Like, game 4, they win last night. And now the talk today is like, wait, hold on a second. They're coming home. And a lot of people are saying they're due for a home ice win. They haven't won at home in this series. 2 things they're due for: winning on home ice and Bobrovsky having a bad game, and the Leafs maybe scoring more than 2 goals. Like, the Leafs have scored 2 goals now, 6 games in a row. Like, it's very difficult, very difficult to win that. But that's what people are clinging on to. The fact that, they're due for like a 5-goal outburst. And if they get that, now all of a sudden it's 3-2 and it's a series. So it seems unlikely just because the margin for error is so low. But it's hard not to have that glimmer of hope here that, like, it could happen. It's almost similar to, like, some of the people in Vancouver and the outlook there. It's like, they could make the playoffs, and then it's like anything could happen. Like, it's you're talking yourself into it. But they obviously need to show something a little more here offensively. I thought they were very desperate last night. Blocking, like, 21 blocked shots. Like, just they played so well defensively in front of that young goalie, Joseph Wall, and give him a lot of credit. Like, he stepped up and he had a really good performance. So we'll see what happens. It's not over yet, and stranger things have happened.
And Petrangelo, the slash. I mean, how surprising to you that guy, of all guys, is the guy that makes the slash?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm surprised that it's Pietrangelo. He had a rough night last night. Like, Evander Kane hits him, and I actually didn't think the Evander Kane hit was that dirty at all because, like, he's turning back into Kane. I don't know what Kane's supposed to do. Is he supposed to just kind of, like, let him go and get out of his way and be like, yeah, man, nice tight turn, like, see you later? No, he's going to finish the hit. It's nice, unfortunate he kind of eats the boards, but he also, like, his skate kind of digs into the ice a little bit as well. But everyone was all over Alex Pietrangelo last night. And, like, he's one of those guys, a star defenseman, puck mover, wants to get up in the rush. Yeah, you kind of need to finish your hits on him. So I wasn't surprised that he lost his cool a little bit. I was surprised that the stick, when he came down on Draisaitl, basically almost touched the ceiling. Like, it's up there really high. He's tickling the ceiling, and then he goes full chop right on Draisaitl. It's absolutely a suspension. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that needs to be a suspension. That's not even close to a hockey play. Like, the puck's not even close. You're not even trying to get the puck. It's a suspension. I think they're waiting to see what it's going to be. But, yeah, like, it was a tough night for Petrangelo, and that is just a crazy maneuver that you tickle the ceiling and then go right down on Leon Draisaitl's wrist or forearm.
That's swinging the gun before you walk into the bank to rob it, right? Like, you're telling everybody what you're about to do.
And people almost can't believe, like, if you watch that happen in slow mo, you're like, he's not going to do it, is he? And then he did.
Frank, fun as always. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully summer's arriving there as it is here in Vancouver, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.